Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, if you're in ministry and concerned about the drug abuse problem in your city and community, we'll learn today how to be a part of the solution. Through a faith-based program, they will provide the training, tools, and resources needed to effectively help those dealing with substance abuse. The program is called Faith-Based Support Specialist, and it works hand in hand with the Agency for Substance Abuse Prevention. Now, many of us may not be aware, but substance abuse, sadly, is the underlying reason for other problems that many communities are dealing with and desperately looking for solutions. Now, here are some facts that you may not know. More than 50% of all violent crimes are caused by alcohol and/or drug abuse. 80% of all domestic violence reports are somehow related to alcohol or drugs. More than 50% of all traffic accidents involve alcohol or drugs. An estimated 60% of poor work performance, officials say, can be tied back to drugs or alcohol. And here's another very sad one. 50% of all suicides are caused by alcohol and/or drug abuse. More than $600 billion are lost annually due to substance abuse. Now, these are not just statistics, it's actually lives lost and lives ruined. The clergy, of course, is one of the community leaders sometimes sought out first by those suffering with substance use disorder. Many who are struggling with some substance misuse problem, they turn to the church. And there is now a program designed for clergy that includes pastors, youth ministers, youth pastors, family pastors, all staff pastors, and ministers. All are eligible to participate in this faith-based program. Our guest this morning on Perspectives, the Reverend Byron A. Jackson. He is the Faith-Based Support Specialist Ambassador of the Agency for Substance Abuse Prevention, also known as ASAP. Well, after a quick break this morning, we'll talk with Reverend Jackson about how the faith-based community, churches, pastors, and ministers are becoming educated, trained, and equipped to help folks dealing with substance abuse disorders. Perspectives continues in just a moment. And welcome back to Perspectives. As we mentioned, our very special guest this morning, the Reverend Byron A. Jackson. And we're talking about a program, Reverend Jackson, that when you look around the community and you look around certain areas, you see the churches, so you know that the church is in many of the communities that are addressing this problem from a very visible standpoint. But as you know, and as I've learned from talking to you and others, it's not something always visible. And people who we don't suspect are also some of the people who are having to deal with this same drug misuse problem. And so I think it's just incredible that your program is in place now to be another way to hopefully help those who are dealing with this. How did you get involved with the faith-based program?
So I was actually recruited by the agency. I do a good bit of work in our community back in Anniston. And so I was recruited by the agency to come and serve as the ambassador for this program. The agency had already worked to create the program and had been working with ADMH, the Alabama Department of Mental Health, to get the program off the ground. And they knew that they needed somebody, preferably a member of the clergy, to sort of serve as the face and the pusher for the actual program. And so that's where I came in. And so I joined the agency, and for about the last year and a half, we've been working to spread this program throughout the state.
Was there anything personal that you had seen within the community that you serve, as well as in the church itself? Because we said earlier that a lot of people, they turn to the church when they're in that need and they come to you. So was there anything personal also that you were saying, oh man, this is something I really need to consider, and then of course you did accept it?
Well, I've always had a heart for people, first off. So knowing that this was something that is plaguing our community, of course I saw it in college, right? You see it as a young adult. I even see it as a pastor. I've done many funerals of people who have overdosed. I have many members who have gone to deal with family situations, right? But then also you have many people in the community who have had a surgery, and they took one too many pills, and before you know it, they have a full-fledged problem. And I've noticed that in our communities, a lot of times, because it's a community of faith, there's a certain stigma within the faith-based community that does not allow for people to step out of that realm and go get the actual professional treatment that they need.
That's a good point you bring up, because we're not talking about just people using and trying stuff recreationally. A lot of folk, and I would be willing to guess at least half of those who end up becoming abusing that, it's due to either a surgery, an injury, pain that won't go away.
Right.
And so it ends up leading to that next step. So when you are talking to somebody like that, how do you first I guess break it down for them to help them take that next step of getting help?
Well, first we have to help them see that actually the nomenclature has recently changed concerning this particular thing of substance abuse, from substance abuse to substance misuse.
Okay.
Because the nomenclature has shifted, because we're trying to get across the understanding that there's a misuse of a substance, because there is use of the substance that can be good and positive, right?
Right.
But it's important that people understand that the person is not necessarily the problem. So to say that it's substance abuse says that the person is a problem. Ms. Pam Butler, who was a great proponent in getting the program started, she recently worked and retired from ADMH. She helped the agency create the program. She said in our very first conference that these people who suffer with substance misuse are not bad people. They're good people that bad things happen to. And so in order to help people make that next step, we first have to help them see that you yourself are able to get beyond this, but you don't need to live in shame or guilt that comes with this, and it's not a death sentence, right? As long as it's not too late, that you've, as long as you've still got breath in your body, there's still an opportunity for redemption. There's an opportunity for renewal. Your life can become new. So it's really a sense of hope that we seek to offer people, and that, as you remove the stigma, can help them make that next step.
Yeah, it's so critical. And when you talk about, with this being a faith-based program, when people come to you in the church,
right,
some of them, they're dealing with that as being the heavy load, so to speak, as they're bringing in. So have you seen, since the time that you've been involved now, where you've seen people who, number one, you didn't suspect that they had issues, and then number two, coming and being able to help them break that down so they could get help?
I have seen both. And the beauty of the faith-based support specialist program is that really it starts a conversation. And we've seen that with the pastors and the members of clergy who participate in the program, but we've also seen that with the community. So when we present this to the community, or now that I have the certificate hanging on my wall in my office, when a member comes in, they start a conversation. It gives them an opportunity to think about, well, maybe I do, or maybe I have a spouse or a family member or my son or daughter who I know uses a substance. They may be misusing it, right? And so if they're misusing it, taking too many, or they're carrying something out in a manner that may not be prescribed. And that's not just with prescription drugs, but also recreational drugs altogether. So it starts a conversation. And so I've seen that with pastors who said, I had no idea that this was a problem. And a lot of people with the stigma think that it's a poor problem. Some people think that it's a problem of a certain race. But what this program is teaching, that substance misuse doesn't discriminate. It affects all people, all races, all walks of life. Everybody's affected. And so we've also seen that when people come to understand that, they don't mind as much, of course, going to get the help they need.
Well, I love the aspect of using the word misuse instead of abuse. Is there a way of spotting someone who might be headed down that road? Especially, you were mentioning family or dear friends. Is there a way of spotting that to where you're able to?
Honestly, from what we've learned, no. I mean, there may be particular ways, and I say that as a person who's not a treatment expert, right? But coming from the aspect that we come from in this program, there are some little signs that you can notice with people who, there may always be something wrong, or they may always be tired, or something of that nature, right? But as a person who's not an expert, I don't want to say that there are these particular signs. The reality is that it can happen to anybody. And again, it doesn't have to be be out of negligence. It can literally be somebody who's in a bad state, recovering from a procedure, or it can be someone who tried something one time and before you know it, there's a full-fledged problem that's affecting their entire life.
And that pain can just be so excruciating
Yes.
for some people. We had a guy here in our community who had played professional sports, and when he told you about his problem, it came from the injury, and
Yes.
then once he was out of the professional environment, he wasn't able to get the medication, and so he ended up making other choices that people end up labeling him, you know, a negative,
Yes.
and someone who was abusing more so, and they didn't know what the underlying problem was.
Right.
And if he only could have gotten that kind of help.
Yes. And it's that stigma. And we've noticed that heavily in the faith-based community, that a lot of people think it's something that, number one, you can just pray away, or even within the church, people who are called to look at people and see the best in them happen to look at people who struggle with substance misuse issues or substance use disorders and believe that these are just bad people, or we need to write them off, or there's no hope for them. But what this program seeks to do, like with that situation, is remove that stigma, and then it opens up the ability for people to come forward and say, you know, this is something I'm dealing with, right? But then it also allows for them to seek treatment and know that there is hope and there is help.
I tell you, it really makes you think when you talk about the stigma and the thought process that we've been sort of moved to over the last 40, 50 years.
Yes.
Here in that war on drugs, coming out of that. Well, Reverend Jackson, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk even more and tell folks how to get involved in the program, because a training session is coming up here in the next few days in Mobile, so that pastors and other ministers can take part in this. Our very special guest this morning, Reverend Byron A. Jackson. Perspectives continues in just a moment. Welcome back. We're talking to the Reverend Byron A. Jackson this morning about a faith-based program that's designed to help our ministry leaders and pastors be involved with being a step in creating some change in the community. Yes. Reverend Jackson, tell us again the name of the program, and then we're going to talk about some dates coming up to where people in the local area can take part in that here in Mobile.
So the Faith-Based Support Specialist program was created by the Agency for Substance Abuse Prevention. We're a certified prevention agency that operates under ADMH, the Alabama Department of Mental Health, and we're in Oxford, Alabama. We created this program, and we've gone around the state actually already. We started in Oxford, went to Huntsville, Montgomery, and then we were in Mobile in December of last year. We've gone to Gaston since then, and now we're returning back to Mobile. And so this training will be available next week, as a matter of fact. Thursday and Friday of next week, that's June 29th and 30th. We'll be back on the campus of the University of South Alabama, and the program is absolutely free.
That is incredible.
It is incredible. We receive funding from the Foundation for Opioid Response Efforts, also known as FOR, out of New York. They granted us funds to be able to train 240 pastors over the course of 2 years. And so we're over halfway there, and we're inviting as many clergymen and women as possible to come and receive this free certification. And so that's what's taking place next week. And so we're inviting people, clergy men and women. It is an ecumenical program. It's important that I state that. It's an ecumenical program, meaning that no matter what it is that you believe, if you are a member of clergy in your organized faith religion, you are eligible to come and receive this training. And the training is certified and backed by the Alabama Department of Mental Health.
This is an outstanding program.
Absolutely.
And when you first reached out to me about it, I said, this is something we need to have in our discussion this morning. Now, tell us, what will they receive when they come to this training? We've had some pictures that we've been showing throughout the program of your training going on. What happens there?
So when you come to the training, first off, it's 2 days, June 29th and 30th, but it's 8 hours each day. So it takes 16 hours to receive the certification. And so when you come to a training, we feed you, so you have breakfast and lunch. So that's a perk that typically gets people to come, right? But also, when you come, we give you general education on prevention and what that looks like. And this is important for clergy so that they understand the work that goes into not just reacting substance misuse, but also preventing substance misuse.
Right.
So we give you general education on that, but then we go into various aspects on both the treatment and prevention side, but also specifically to clergy. For instance, there's a communication skills and effective listening session and seminar where we have a wonderful facilitator, and the majority of these facilitators are from the local area.
Okay.
So they train them, because a lot of times we're taught to talk, right, and not necessarily to listen. And so this can help us hear some of those keys that may indicate that a person may have a particular issue. But then we also train you on the treatment process, treatment progression and planning. Then there's also levels of care. So what does it look like for a person? And the reason this is important is because if I am counseling or guiding a person, walking with a person as a pastor or a member of clergy who is thinking about entering treatment, there's typically a lot of fear about uprooting my life and entering treatment. Well, there's outpatient treatments if you're eligible for that, but then there's also inpatient treatments. And the important part about it is that if the person that this particular client or member or parishioner trusts, if they are educated and they understand the treatment process, then they can help ease some of that angst on the front end. But then also, and I believe this is one of the key components of the training, and that is that we have vendors come, and these are prevention and treatment programs and agencies in the local area. They come to the particular training conference, and these clergymen and women get to interact and build contacts and relationships, with these treatment facilities, prevention agencies, so that even after we're gone, this fire can continue to burn within this community, because now these pastors are not trying to do it all on their own. They know who the experts are, and they know how to work with them.
Yeah, you are being a catalyst in the community.
That's what we're trying to do.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you recommend a pastor to get the people in the ministry there at his church who are involved or interested to all come, or to designate one person to send, since you're working with 240 as your goal around the state?
It's important that we start at the head, and that's the original design of this program, is to start with the pastor, but also those staff ministers. So since this particular program is not designed for the laity, it's designed for the clergy, we would love for pastor and all staff ministers to come and register for this particular program. It's important that, number one, we understand, and I understand as a pastor, that if the pastor is the only one who's been educated, though it's going to change the way they speak from the pulpit and they implement ministry, if the other people have not been educated who are on their staff and their team, it'll still be difficult.
Right.
So we would push the team approach.
That's good.
That if you're a pastor and you have a staff ministry team, it would be great if all of you are able to come and receive this training.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes,
it does,
it does.
because you've got more effective outreach in that group as compared to everything being on you, the pastor, and you're back again. Right, right. So important. So when you look at the different places you've been around the state, were you looking at areas of high misuse, or looking at just different sectors of the state so that you could reach more of the pastors?
Well, we recognize that first, the city sort of serves as a central location. There are typically areas of high misuse in those major cities. Like I told you, we hit Huntsville, Birmingham, Oxford, Montgomery, Mobile. But also they serve as a central location where people can come, find a hotel, and receive this training. So we've done a lot of recruiting in rural areas, but we've held the trainings in major cities for that, ability for people to come to a central location. And
that's a very good point. And I want you to reach out to the pastors who are serving the rural community, because the problems are just as profound out there.
Yes.
And we do have an incredible rural community around Mobile. So put that message out there to them and let them know that you are looking to see them.
Oh, yes. I mean, we have met with so many rural pastors, rural churches. That's where we've hit the ground, and myself and the rest of the team have done recruiting throughout the state in these rural areas, because we understand that not only is the substance misuse just as prevalent, but it is also areas of fewer resources for help. And so we want to recruit them. They are just as important, just as vital to come to these trainings so that you can receive this information as well.
I'm excited about your program. So tell us again the name and how long we should expect to commit to you on those 2 days and those dates again as we sort of do a summation here.
Okay, so again, the Faith-Based Support Specialist program takes 16 hours. It'll be June 29th and 30th. That's next Thursday and Friday. We'll be here in Mobile on the campus of the University of South Alabama. It's from 8 to 4 both days. We will feed you both breakfast and lunch, so you can come. It's absolutely free. All you have to do is register online at fbss.asaprev.com. Once again, that's fbss.asaprev.com. You go there, scroll down to the upcoming events and hit register, and then you'll be able to register there. We'll send you a confirmation email giving you all the information, and then we'll just look forward to seeing you next Thursday, June 29th.
And what is the goal? Take about 20 seconds to tell us what we're trying to accomplish.
The goal of this program is to eradicate stigma first within the faith-based community. We also want to bridge the gap between the faith-based community and the mental health field altogether. We want it to be known that these two can indeed work together. We believe that prayer, prevention, and treatment do indeed work together. But then the goal is also that people in the faith-based community can go to their trusted clergyman or woman, receive the help that they need, informed help, and then be guided to the treatment services that they need.
Reverend Byron A. Jackson, we thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this information, and we're hoping that you get an overwhelming response to this the 29th and 30th.
Thank
and
you.
once again, here's that contact information that Reverend Jackson mentioned, both the website, a phone number, and of course an email as well, so that you can be a part of this. If you're a local clergyman or minister, pastor, please take part. Remember, you can get all these previous episodes at this information. I'm Eric Reynolds. You have a great week ahead.